Hey everybody, it's Leslie Gordon. I'm the Executive Director of the Breman Jewish Heritage Museum. We are your Jewish museum in the area, and we are so thrilled to be able to do this partnership with the Atlanta Opera, and Tomer Zvulun has been so great about sharing the information about this amazing opera that's in repertory starting soon in that wonderful tent behind him. So with great pleasure, I turn this over to Lois Reitzes.
Thank you, Leslie. Tomer, Arthur, I feel very honored to be a part of this event and really look forward to hearing the Atlanta Opera's performance of the Kaiser of Atlantis. Tomer, you never appear blasé, but the level of excitement that you have conveyed about the Kaiser of Atlantis is exceptional, even with your basic enthusiastic self. So please tell us why you chose this work for the Big Tent series.
First of all, I want to say hi to everybody. I see so many familiar names and faces, and thank you, Lois, for moderating it. Thank you for our music director, Arthur Fagan, for being a part of it. And of course, thank you to the Breman Museum for hosting us. It's a masterpiece. Kaiser from Atlantis is a piece that's been in the repertoire since 1975 when it was premiered. And I've always wanted to present it. And I feel like now the time is really ripe for it to be shown. This is a piece that historically is very significant because it was written in a labor camp in Theresienstadt during the Holocaust in 1943 by a librettist named Peter Kien and a composer named Viktor Ullmann. And it's a parody about an emperor, a very powerful, potent emperor that makes a pact with death because he realizes that the more people die in the world, the more power he will have. At some point, death is not amused with this anymore, and he breaks his sword, and there is a limbo in the world. Nobody can die until the emperor abdicates, until he gives up, and then world order is back. And that piece back in 1943 was a powerful allegory, parody for many different regimes. It was not just Hitler, it was all around, Stalin, Mussolini, you name them, they were all there, and they could all be that emperor. And so there's something very universal about this. But you asked, why now? And the answer is that there is a certain hope in this piece that is profound. Because in the middle of this enigmatic, dystopian, terrible world of the Kaiser from Atlantis, there is hope. And the hope is through love, is through the creatures that are impacted by everything that's going on in the world. It's a soldier and a girl that meets, and their love gets them through the difficult times. And I feel like we need hope right now for so many reasons. So there's many reasons why we programmed it, but those are some of them.
What is your personal history with the piece, Tomer? You said you discovered it after 1975. You were a child.
So yeah, 1975, I was not even a child. I was just in planning. But I saw it first in 1997 in Israel, in the Opera House. And it was very powerful in Israel because Holocaust is hovering over us all the time there, especially in the 90s, where we were much closer to the Holocaust than we are right now. And then in 2001, I assisted on it. I was the assistant director to a wonderful director who's in many ways a mentor for me, Rhoda Levine. And Rhoda was the director that directed the world premiere in 1975. See,
I think
in 1943, they rehearsed the piece in the ghetto, in the camp, in the labor camp, but the piece was never premiered because they sent them to Auschwitz. So for 31, 32 years, it was kind of lost until Rhoda came and did the premiere in Amsterdam. And then in 2001, she did it in Boston University, and I assisted her. Since then, I've been wanting to do it. And you know, the world is very small because in 2005, when I did my very first show in Atlanta as an assistant director, Rhoda was the director, and Arthur Fagan, a colleague, a music director, was the conductor of the show we all did together. So it's kind of all comes together in a funny way.
I think that 1975 is what stuck in my mind. Of course, you would have been in utero or younger at that point, and a flicker in your parents' eye. But the 2001 experience and the 2005 experience were critical to your bringing this piece here. The establishment of Theresienstadt, or as the Germans called it, Theresienstadt, was for propaganda and deception. The Nazis set up the camp in 1940 as a hybrid ghetto and concentration camp. It was not a death camp, although I think something like 33,000 people died there because of the terrible conditions. But when the Nazis established Theresienstadt, they had this perverse notion of showcasing the camp as a model for culture and the arts. And they encouraged musical performance and composition. We know about an orchestra in Theresienstadt. There was a performance of Verdi's Requiem. Arthur, what do we know about Viktor Ullmann's music and life while he was imprisoned at Theresienstadt?
Well, first of all, Ullmann was incredibly prolific in terms of what he wrote. He was incredibly prolific. While he was at Theresienstadt, he wrote many song cycles, he wrote a string quartet, he wrote 3 piano sonatas, and he wrote the Kaiser of Atlantis. And I have a quote from him, translated from the German, which describes his experience in Theresienstadt to some degree. If I may read it. Theresienstadt, where artistic substance has to try and endure its daily structure, where every bit of divine inspiration stands counter to its surroundings. I have composed quite a lot of new music here in Theresienstadt, mostly at the request of pianists, singers, and conductors for the purpose of the ghetto's recreation periods. And there was this recreation period, it's called Freizeitgestaltung. It's you know, what do you do with your leisure time? An incredible concept, you know, and so it's so deceptive in terms of, you know, what was going on in terms of the Nazi movement. Anyway, I'll continue. I have bloomed in musical growth and not felt myself at all inhibited. We simply did not sit and lament on the shores of the rivers of Babylon that our will for culture was not sufficient to our will to exist. And I am convinced that all who have worked in life and art to wrestle content into its unyielding form will say that I was right.
His background was interesting. I mean, he had impeccable musical training,
Sure.
University of Vienna, and he was mentored by Alexander Zemlinsky, who introduced him to Schoenberg.
Right.
And he was trapped in Prague in 1939 when the Nazis invaded. Ullmann's parents had converted to Christianity. I'm not sure about his grandparents, but he was not raised as a Jew. And that didn't matter a whole lot to those who imprisoned him. But do we know about his coming to terms with his identity while he was imprisoned?
Well, I do understand that he did convert back to Judaism at the age of 21.
Oh, he did. So as Schoenberg converted back right before he moved,
Right.
I know that as a statement of identity and defiance. I read that your parents were Holocaust survivors, Arthur.
Yes.
And I wondered how that informs your approach to this music.
I have to say that as a son of Holocaust survivors, the only way that I can try to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive is by trying to be involved in performances of works by Holocaust composers. And actually, we did have a partnership with the Breman Museum several years ago. We performed works by Gideon Klein, who was one of the four famous serious composers of the Holocaust, of Theresienstadt. And we also, there, you know, at Theresienstadt, there was an incredible spectrum of musical activity. There was a coffee house where the jazz musicians used to play. As you mentioned, they did the Verdi Requiem, which was reenacted here, I think, even in Atlanta.
Yes.
They did opera performances. They did Bartered Bride. They did Carmen. Many years ago, I did in Antwerp a reenactment of the Nabucco, which was done in Theresienstadt, in which, when they didn't have the armor to give the to give the soldiers, they used pots and pans instead. And we did that actually in the production that I had conducted in Antwerp. And then also you had, you know, you had kind of folk music being written. There were songs written by Ilse Weber, beautiful songs, which we had performed actually at the Bremen Museum a number of years ago with Helene Schneiderman. So when you look at this incredible amount and diversity of activity, it's hard to believe, you know, that this could happen at a camp like Theresienstadt, you know? But the propaganda machine behind it, the way they staged soccer games and other activities, just to deceive the entire civilized world that things were not as bad as the rumors.
And yet, how many went on to die in Auschwitz and Treblinka, in staggering numbers.
And fall of 1944, all four of the composers were, I think, just shortly after the dress rehearsal of, within a few weeks of the dress rehearsal of the Kaiser of Atlantis, I think that they were deported to Auschwitz. And of course, the SS officers said that they wouldn't perform it because they found too many parallels between, you know, the Kaiser überall and Hitler. I don't quite see it. I think Tomer could talk more about that.
Yeah, I think I read that Ullmann started working on this after World War I. So indeed, it is an allegory for any brutal dictator or authoritarian, totalitarian ruler, but it was not specifically a parody of Hitler.
That's right. That's the way I see it, as not specifically a parody of Hitler. I don't know how Tomer feels about it.
I mean, look, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and offense, being offended, is also in the eye of the beholder. What's really great in this piece is that it's an allegory, it's enigma. It's like mythology. They were highly influenced by mythology. And so back in 1943, Hitler was not in a place where he was abdicating yet. You know, we have the benefit of history to know we are post-dictators, not pre-dictators. And so I think that Ullmann and Keen were looking back in the past, and some of their influences were perhaps World War I. And that Kaiser who abdicates and gives up everything, which is why eventually there's a resurgence of fascism in Germany. And maybe he was influenced by that story. But regardless, what's really great about it is that it can be appropriate for any number of dictators along history. And this idea that by killing as many people as possible, by having as much power as you can in the world, will glorify you. And the fact that at the end, all of them are going to go to their demise. And that's connected a little bit to another composer who's not really Jewish, and that's Richard Wagner, who wrote a piece called Götterdämmerung about the decline of all those people in power. Power, just like life, has an expiration date. Yeah. And it's what you do with your power while you have it that is going to make a difference in the world.
Well, Wagner enjoyed his power.
Wagner enjoyed many things. There's a great book now, Alex Ross wrote,
yes,
called Wagnerism. It's fantastic.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. Well, this, for Tomer, for you and Arthur, how would you describe the music in this piece? Is it tonal? Is it melodic?
I think there are kind of three styles in it. There's the Schoenbergian influence, which you hear right at the beginning of the opera, hello, hello, and that stuff. And then you find a little bit of the cabaret type music of Kurt Weill in it. And you also feel a style of music that was kind of espoused by Hindemith in it too. So it's really a mixture of styles in a very short piece.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's especially Kurt Weill that I hear constantly in this. You also hear Strauss, especially in the aria of the drummer, the aria of the girl. But the spirit of Weill is all over this. And it's connected to the kind of the motto of our season, which is a quote by Kurt Weill, who said back in 1928, if the bounds of opera cannot accommodate the theater of the time, the Zeittheater, then those bounds must be broken. And I feel that this right now in a tent is exactly relevant to our time.
And I saw that you are going to have a recital of Kurt Weill music as well.
Yeah, like I said, his spirit is all over the season. We're going to announce what we're doing in the winter soon. And I can share with you that there's going to be a major Kurt Weill piece that will be there. Mack the Knife is the theme of the concert that we're doing later on October 27 under the tent. And it features 3 Lotalenia competition winners that are part of our company players. Some of them are with us today, but Jasmine Habersham, Meg Marino, and Brian Vu are all Lotalenia winners, and they're leading this evening of the music of Kurt Weill.
Sounds wonderful. Tomer, a silver lining that you found during the pandemic was access, easy access to internationally renowned singers, several of whom you had worked with, but who happen to live here in Atlanta and therefore remain here until normal life resumes. Would you tell us about the Atlanta Opera Company players, some of whom will perform in this opera?
Yeah, you know, I always felt that some of the greatest international talent lives in Atlanta. I always knew that. I didn't always know why. It's definitely not because of the traffic, maybe because there's a great airport here, maybe it's a great town and people are so warm and it's easy to get anywhere in the world. But I definitely wanted to capitalize on that. And it was impossible to do so because all those incredible singers have their schedule locked for years in advance. So trying to get on a Jamie Barton, Morris Robinson, Jasmine Habersham, Kevin Burdett, and the list goes on, is very difficult. And then enters COVID-19, and what happens in the world is devastating for a lot of those artists because many opera companies, most opera companies in the world, cancel everything they do, and those artists are left often without compensation for the work that they were supposed to do, without health insurance, and they're stuck in Atlanta. And so suddenly they are available, and even more so, they want to work, not only because they have to make a living, but also because they want to exercise what they do best, what they were trained for, which is connecting with other people and sharing their talent. And so it was a no-brainer to create this group of amazing company of players. And the idea behind it is not only to find employment through this difficult time, but also to create something sustainable so that there's a meaningful connection between those talented people and this community. So it's not only that they perform in our productions, they will do concerts, they will do social media events, they will connect with our community, with our donors, with our board members, etc. And it's been amazing. In addition to the company players, we are also launching this season the studio players, which is a version of our studio program, Young Artist Program, 6 additional fantastic singers that are with us for a total of 18 artists this season.
What time period are you setting this Kaiser production?
It's a dystopian world in the not too distant future. Let's say that a major pandemic happened in the world and there were some very difficult elections and things are a little off kilter and It's a tough world out there. And one of the big influences for us for the production is 1984, which was the book 1984, which was written in the same decade that Kaiser from Atlantis was written, 1943. It was Kaiser 1948, I think, is 1984. And that world of dystopian information that is manipulated, control of government over people is something that permeates through this production. But I would also say this, which is really important, is the circus. And we haven't mentioned once yet that the other show that we're doing is Pagliacci. And Pagliacci and Kaiser both happen in that circus. And the reason for Pagliacci is obvious, because it's a troupe of clowns that come to perform in a circus. For Kaiser, this happens in a circus because the world is a circus, and because that circus is a depository for bodies and for death and for protective equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see the damage that war or pandemic or devastation, depression has on artists. And this is where everything is connected. Because when things go wrong in the world, on the highest level of government and the powers of being, it has an impact on the little person and on artists that are left vulnerable, the most vulnerable. And it goes back into Theresienstadt and those artists who, despite the fact that they are in a labor camp, are coming together despite the most unimaginable condition, and they're writing a masterpiece, and they're finding a way to share their voices and to connect with the community and with other people. And that's exactly is the ethos of the company players and of the Atlanta Opera during this time, is that despite everything, we will find a way to carry on and to connect with our community and say something important in a way that is safe.
Well, I know safety certainly is a concern among those who would want to attend. So would you talk about the safety protocols and the setup you have in place for audience members?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when this all happened, and you know, for me, Friday the 13th, March the 13th is a date that is etched in my memory. That's where we canceled Porgy and Bess, and there was so much misinformation coming to us at the time. So little we knew about the pandemic. And you know what, 8 months later, we still are not sure about all the facts and details. But one thing is super clear, and that is outdoors is more safe than indoors. Nobody can argue with that. And so that's why we chose early on in this whole process back in April, we chose to postpone our whole season and not hope that in September there will be a vaccine, or in December there will be a miracle drug, or in March, like, you know, many others clung to that hope. For us, it was an opportunity. You never waste a crisis. And for us, it was an opportunity to reinvent this art form and to take the Discovery series, which we have created in the past, which was all about chamber operas in unusual environments that tell the story in a different way, and take that idea and put it into a COVID world and create productions outdoors under a tent. And by the way, the walls of those tents are raised so that fresh air is coming in. And we linked and connected with a bunch of incredible epidemiologists, people that are leaders of their field. Professor Carlos Del Rio from Emory University, John Halpert, the CEO of Grady, and a number of doctors and health experts on our board of directors. And they came up with this exhaustive, long protocols, 37 pages of how to open safely. And some of those measures include, in addition to performing outdoors under that tent, a reduced orchestration. It includes no chorus. So the chorus is zoomed into the environment. It includes singing in masks. The singers have to sing in masks unless they're in plexiglass towers that separate them. Rehearsals is the most dystopic environment you can imagine. I've been in rehearsals in the past 10 days. All of us wear masks all the time. We have regular breaks to wash our hands and use hand sanitizers, 6 feet at least between people, which creates a major challenge in an art form that is all about intimacy and connection. How do you stage a love duet between a baritone and a soprano when they can't touch each other? That's the question.
Easy.
Not easy. And you'll have to come to the tent to see how we did that.
Well, I'm intrigued. The singers will wear masks?
When they're out of the plexiglass tubes, plexiglass towers, they will wear masks. And, you know, they've been singing in masks. I'm very proud of them. They sound glorious. Some of them are with us today. There's just ways to deal with everything. We find ways to carry on regardless of the situation.
How many cast members are there?
So in Pagliacci, there is 5 singers, a virtual course, and a host of circus performers. And that's a really important part of this whole spectacle. It's a pandemic spectacle, as I call it. There is a unicyclist and stilt walkers and jugglers and silk operators and puppets. We are working with the Center of Puppetry Arts. So puppeteers are operating replicas of the singers because singers can't sing on top of each other, but puppets can get very close to each other if the puppeteers have masks on. So there's all this stuff that we had to think about in preparation for this.
This is fantastic. And I read that the configuration for opera goers inside the tent, where the walls, there are no walls, it's air circulating, is in pods.
That's right. Social distancing, at least 6 feet between those pods. There are 60 pods. In every pod table, 4 people that are coming together. Everybody's required to have masks. The shows are less than an hour and a half without intermission, so we minimize any kind of contact. And it's going to be very strict. Folks will have to have the temperature taken at the door, and et cetera, et cetera.
Arthur, what about the orchestral musicians? How large is the ensemble?
Oh, these are small ensembles. There are 13 players for Kaiser of Atlantis, and I think there are about 8 for the for Pagliacci.
And do you have horns and winds?
The Pagliacci Orchestra is primarily winds and a double bass, but a piano that fills out the rest of the sound.
Okay.
But you know, it's important to say they're in separate tents, and there is plexiglass barriers between them. Those who can wear masks, like the string players, are going to wear masks. And all those rules are captured in the 37-page masterpiece that Dr. Carlos Del Rio helped us create.
We have some questions people have submitted before time runs out. Was the scheduling of the first performance 11 days before the election and the last 11 days after the election intentional?
You know, this piece is an allegory, and it's up to people to project and interpret and think about anything. They're welcome to think. That's the beauty of art. And so we invite people to make their own interpretations. That's the beauty of art.
Okay, we talked about the safety precautions. Joseph Alonso writes, I've seen some Kaiser cast listings with Harlequin and others with Pierrot. Is there a distinction? Did you choose Harlequin, and if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, you know, across history, that character of the clown, from Commedia dell'arte, Harlequin, to Pierrot the sad clown, to Charlie Chaplin, to you name it. I mean, there's that character is has many manifestations. But for us, the point is not which type of clown it is. It's the fact that this is an artist. Harlequin or Pierrot is an artist that is impacted by whatever happens up there above our heads. Yeah. And it's up to us how we deal with the situation.
Another viewer asks if any programs are available virtually?
So programs will be available virtually. We're working on the synopsis and the program notes and the cast list and everything, and they will be available when we open. And on our website, atlantaopera.org, you can read more about the piece, about the casts, et cetera, et cetera.
Another question asks if you are rotating singers or if the same cast is performing on each of the operas run.
No, they're absolutely separate casts. We are very strict about separating singers. Actually, we have two couples in our company of players, people that are married to each other. And that's Alex Schrader and Daniela Mack, who are both in Kaiser, and Meg Marino and Michael Mays. And what's beautiful about the fact that they're married to each other is that that's the only time that you can actually get people to touch and hug and connect to each other, because they're already quarantining together.
Will there be an accessible version of a performance of these operas online for people who cannot get to attend the opera in the tent?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the other question I saw there was, will the tent be safe? The answer is, the intention is absolutely that the tent will be safe. That's why we're working so hard to create all those rules and follow them. But yes, the other question, and the answer to the other question is also yes. We are creating films based on those live performances. We have a wonderful videographer on staff, Felipe Barral, and we're bringing into town an opera singer, famous opera singer, Ryan McKinney, who's now working on film. And together, we're going to capture everything on film and release it in December. And this is a new venture for the Atlanta Opera that the pandemic kind of forced us into moving fast on, and that is the digital studios at the Atlanta Opera. We are creating content in addition to the shows that we are producing live and then capturing them via film. We're also going to capture those concerts, and there are all kinds of initiatives that we are creating digitally. For example, we are working on an initiative called Love Letters to Atlanta. And the idea behind it is taking those iconic singers, Morris Robinson, Jamie Barton, Kevin Burdett, and coupling them, linking them with iconic locations in Atlanta that are meaningful to the community and to them as citizens of Atlanta. So for example, Morris Robinson sang to Dream the Impossible Dream at the Fox Theater. Jamie Barton sang Georgia on My Mind at the Fox. Kevin Burdett reopened the Civic Center. The Civic Center was closed for years. There was no human voice singing in the Civic Center for years. And Kevin Burdett went there with us, with our film crew, and recorded an aria there. So it's an opportunity for us to connect back to the community, to tell the stories of those iconic places that have so much to do with the history of the opera and with the history of those singers that are a part of our company players.
And who accompanied the singers?
Our wonderful pianist and chorus master, Rolando Salazar.
I think that's it for the questions so far as I see. I was curious to know if Arthur, you or Tomer had any listening recommendations in advance of going to hear the Atlanta Opera's performance. Are there recordings of the Kaiser of Atlantis?
I would say that there's one recording that I find to be exemplary. I can tell you some of the singers and the conductor, but I don't have the whole cast in my mind. But I know both many of those singers and the conductor of this. The conductor is Lothar Lothar Zagrosek, Zagrosek, and some of the singers on this album or CD are Frank Mazura and Herbert Lippert.
Sounds like a Czech recording.
No. These are well, Herbert might be Austrian, and Mazura is definitely German.
It's a Leipzig orchestra, and the other singers are Krauss, Berry, and you know it's ideal because if you have iTunes, then it's the recording that pops there the first, and it's I would recommend it as well. It's very good. Also online you can see Kaiser of Atlantis performances. There's one from Wolf Trap Opera that you can find the whole video. So there's a lot of it out there.
I think it often enhances our live experience when we have an idea in our ears and minds of what to expect.
I would recommend everybody, as they listen to it, to also read the incredible text by Peter Keen, because it's so accurate and acerbic and to the point.
Arthur read that powerful quote from Viktor Ullmann. He actually had written an essay on Goethe from the Theresienstadt. And I think that anything that we can read, watch, learn is all part of the very important process of recovering and restoring life to this music, whose composer did not have the choice of life.
It's also very interesting about Ullmann that he kind of joined the anthroposophic movement, the Rudolf.
Yes.
Mm.
And I'm very familiar with it because when we lived in Germany, I sent my children to Waldorf schools. And Waldorf, the whole philosophy of education is exemplifies what the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner. I don't accept the philosophy anymore. It has very strong racist aspects to it.
Really?
Oh yes, they talked about the Aryan features, the structure of the skull, all kinds of stuff, and it was very racist in terms of black people. Seriously.
Well, that's disturbing.
Yeah.
It's a wonder that some of these enlightened thinkers were attracted to it, although who knows, with local chapters or their own interpretations, they may not have.
It fostered a wonderful philosophy about education and about children doing what is really suitable for them at any given age. And it was about experiential knowledge, and you know, it wasn't sort of goal oriented or test oriented in any way. Just the opposite.
I would like to close, if I may, with another quote from Viktor Ullmann, but first I must be distracted by that adorable little girl with Tomer. Please introduce us.
This is Maya, by the way. She's
Maya. Hi.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
And the girls are upstairs, and they're telling me that if I don't go upstairs for dinner, I'll be in trouble.
Okay.
I know.
Tomer, thank you.
Hey, it's been really wonderful. Thank you so very much for everybody that joined us. And Leslie, thank you for organizing it with us. Lois, thank you for moderating it. And Arthur, of course, thank you for your thoughts about this.
It was a privilege. Leave you with this quote from Viktor Ullmann. Our endeavor with respect to arts was commensurate with our will to live. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.